The Marriage Proposal, Part 2.
As already mentioned, Airo's family was poor, and her parents had 9 children to care for. Airo, the second oldest, felt she must help them. She knew it would be easier for her mum and dad if she left for Australia to get married. But she really didn't want to leave her country. She loved Greece, yet she was the one in her family who must leave it. Concern for her family made her leave her people and her country. Just like Theo had already done before her, Airo decided to migrate to help her family. Airo did know a bit about Theo. She had seen him and spoken to him maybe 4 or 5 times. She had heard other girls gossiping about him and hoping to meet him. She had spoken to Theo when he came to the funeral of her mother's brother, who had been killed in the Civil War in March 49. She loved her uncle very much and was depressed when he had died. She remembered that her uncle played with her when she was just a small girl. He had let her boss him and make him do whatever she said. Often she had wanted to go on his strong shoulders and to order him where to take her, treating him like her horse. Then, when she was 17, he was shot and killed by the enemy on a quiet mountain road. He was only 33 years old. It was at this loved uncle's funeral service that Theo had first spoken to her. Airo had worn black mourning clothes. She was serving coffee and dry biscuits. She knew Theo liked her serious manner, and her sad eyes had touched his heart. Theo was a young soldier, and her uncle had been his captain. "Who is your father?" Theo had asked her. Now she was going to Australia, a strange and wealthy land, to marry Theo. She did not know him well. What a thing to happen! She hoped to be lucky and happy with her new life in Australia. Over the next few weeks, she cried till her eyes were red. She knew she would not see her family for many, many years. To tell the truth, it took Airo 21 years before she went back to Greece for a visit. In those days, Australia was at the ends of the earth, and nobody in Greece knew much about it. No one had a television or a computer. Telephone calls were very expensive too. However, it took another 1.5 years before she got her visa, because Theo did not know what to do and what paperwork was needed. After many efforts and mistakes with government people, and with Andy's help, Theo at last sent her a ticket to Australia. Theo's brother,
Panayotis, came to see her leave at the port at Piraeus,
where big passenger ships left Greece. He tried to cheer her up by making her think of her future. "I want to hear that you have had a son," he told her. As the ship left the port, Aira cried because she was leaving her life behind. Suddenly she felt scared. What was she doing leaving her country? She ran to the highest part of the ship at the back to see her last view of her much-loved Greece. She wanted her brothers and sisters to see her, so she took off her brown coat and waved it to them like a flag. She stood there waving her coat until she couldn't see them any more. Then she slowly walked to her shared room on the ship. In those days, flying on an airplane cost a lot, so most emigrants travelled by ship and shared rooms as well. In the 1950s, the Immigration Department of Australia brought to Australia many ships full of young European women. These young ladies wanted to marry the migrant men already working in Australia. These ships were called bride ships. Aira was on a bride ship called the Tasmania. It had been built to transport cows, but now it carried 800 women. They were all going to Australia with the idea of getting married and starting families in their new country. The Australian government wanted to get more people to live in Australia. To help the young men stay in Australia, the government gave free transport for these women. But Theo didn't know about this, and he paid for Aira's fare himself, as already mentioned.